Okay, that's very nice. Hello. I would have loved to be in Ukraine in person. I've been to Kiev once, and I would have definitely come down there, but somehow the timing and the facility and the logistics didn't work out. So, but well, that's the power of internet technology. I'm here in remote, but still talking to you. So, all right, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right, very good. So you can see my screen, which is good. Let me check. You can see my screen, yes? Okay, very good, cool. So today I'll talk about, this is a pretty bleeding edge presentation that I've just started preparing. And when I was talking to Andre, I thought this would be a good topic to talk about because it has started gaining a lot of traction recently. The concepts have been around for a while, but with Java EE7 going live, the platform is so much simplified. I thought it would be good to talk about how do we do continuous delivery with Java EE7. So first of all, my name is Arun Gupta. I work for Red Hat. I'm the director for the developer outreach. Feel free to tweet, and we love seeing tweets, using @ArunGupta, and I'm sure Andre would appreciate, using JavaDay as a hashtag over there as well. So if you look at it, try to understand what is continuous delivery. Before that, actually, if we go to the first principle of Agile Manifesto itself, essentially it says our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So continuous delivery is a method that advocates the creation of an automated deployment pipeline. And what is this deployment pipeline? We'll talk about that in a second. The key goal is to release software rapidly and reliably into production. The goal of continuous delivery, as you think, is to adopt a holistic end-to-end delivery perspective and optimize cycle time, which is basically the average time between production releases. And essentially, what that gives you is lower development cost, minimize the risk of release failure, and of course, you get a faster feedback loop from the customer. Now, Agile Manifesto has been around for many years, but the term continuous delivery is becoming more prominent for past year or two only. So what you're looking at is it's a pretty bleeding edge presentation in that sense. Now, this book was written by Jez Humble and David Farley a few years back. This is considered as the holy grail for continuous delivery. It talks about the entire process of how what continuous delivery is, how it can be done. Essentially, it says, as a software developer, you're building your software. Then you deploy your software. Okay, I've built it, and I'm going to deploy it, and then I'm going to test it. So those are sort of three critical parts. Once I've tested it, it looks good, then I release it. Now, that's your typical cycle, but what continuous delivery talks about is how you go build to deploy to test to release, and once you've done the release, you go back into build, deploy, test, release cycle. So it's a constant pipeline, so to say. As I was saying, it's a deployment pipeline. At any point of time, you put a feature, you commit a feature, it goes to deployment, it goes through testing, it goes through release. And what are the principles of continuous delivery? Is it automated? Is it manual? How do we make sure the tests are relevant and things like that? So in that sense, the principles of continuous delivery, there are quite a few principles, but the key ones that I think are relevant are, first of all, you need to have a repeatable and reliable process. What that means is you use the same deterministic release mechanism in all environment. Now, whether it is development, whether it is testing, whether it is production, whether it is release, you should be able to reproduce the entire environment. And that's where technologies like Docker, if you guys are aware of, comes in very handy. That's where I'll show you how OpenShift, which is Red Hat's PaaS platform, helps out. Another important aspect or principle of continuous delivery is automate almost everything. And the reason I say almost is because things like Jenkins, they enable you continuous integration. Things like automated testing, they enable you. Things like integration testing can be enabled. But certain times, you do want to do things like download testing. Oh, my build is pushed on the website. The download testing has to be manual. Somebody has to click through the things and then make it happen. So that's the point of saying automate almost everything. Another key principle of continuous delivery is you keep almost everything, well, not almost, but in this case, everything in version control. Most of the time, when we're doing software development, our code, fortunately, our code is at least in the source code control, which is good. But continuous delivery actually takes it to the next level, where it says your configuration, that means your JDBC resources, your JMS resources, all of that goes into source code as well. Your schema, that goes into source code as well. So how does your database schema look like? That's where tools like Flyway, which actually does database migration, helps very well. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Well, that's about the coding environment. But what it says is your infrastructure should also go into source code control. And what that means is, what CPU are you running at? So I mean, think about if you want to run your application in a cloud environment, if you're spinning up a virtual machine, how much memory it has, how much compute power it has, what kind of JDK it has, all of that, your complete infrastructure essentially should go into source code control as well. And this also relates back to the very first point where you say, if everything is in source code control, you tag it well, then you can actually fall back and say, by the way, hey, this is all repeatable, reliable process. Another aspect, a very important aspect of continuous delivery is when you're done, what you mean is the feature is released. In general sense, we as developers, we think I'm done when I've committed my feature. Now it's up to testing to figure out what happened. Then it's up to production team to figure out what happens. But essentially, one of the key aspects of continuous delivery is done means your feature is live on the website. Your feature is live in the application. That means you are engaged throughout the whole process of release, whether it's testing, whether it's production, whether it's performance testing. So you are really responsible for your feature end to end. And the last point is the toughest one really as part of continuous delivery, where it says it's not just a single person who is responsible. It's not just a team that is responsible. It's not just a particular role that is responsible. All the teams, individuals, roles, they need to rely. And the whole responsibility of continuous delivery really relies upon everybody together. So everybody is really responsible, not just a single person. Now, having said that, so kind of giving you the basic concepts of continuous delivery, let's see what our continuous delivery toolchain might look like for Java EE. Well, Wildfly is a Java EE 7 compliant application server. So we'll talk briefly about that. JBoss Tools is Eclipse basically with bunch of JBoss Tools is a set of plugins that works in Eclipse and provides a lot of functionality around all the different JBoss technologies. We'll talk briefly about JBoss Forge, how it automates repeated automated tasks. We'll talk about OpenShift, how that provides you sort of your repeatable, reliable processes, version control, and things like that. And last but not the least, testing is a very, very critical part of all of this. So we'll talk about Arquillian. So together, if you're looking at your Java EE continuous delivery toolchain, these are sort of going to be your essential tools. Okay. All right. So before we start digging into the presentation, let's talk briefly about how does my what are the key themes of Java EE 7? Well, Java EE 7 was released last year, June of 2013, actually. And there were three key themes: developer productivity, HTML5, and meeting enterprise demands. So if you look at developer productivity, this theme has been there for a while. We just kept working on it again and again. And the platform is extremely simplified, lot more focus on POJOs, lot less boilerplate code, lot more cohesion within the platform, which used to be like working in its own silo earlier. In terms of HTML5, we've added support for WebSockets. We've added support for JSON. Those are two brand new specifications. REST API is extremely simplified. Now there's a client-side API as well. And then meeting enterprise demands is where Java EE has been really powerful. So we added support for batch and concurrency over there and simplified JMS. So let me take a pause quickly and check here. So can you guys see me and hear me clearly? Okay, that's a good nod. Okay. So then, the top 10 features of Java EE 7. Well, we talked about how we added support for WebSocket client and server endpoints. There is support for batch applications. Most of this support actually came from Spring Batch. So if you're familiar with that, that's where it's coming. Added support for low-level JSON processing. Added support for concurrency utilities, where you can spin up your new threads and they run in the container context. The JMS API was extremely simplified. Earlier, if you were to do container managed transactions, they could only be done in EJB, but now you can just take a POJO and put a transactional annotation on them, which allows you to do container managed transactions in a POJO very easily. There is JAX-RS, there's a new client API that is introduced in JAX-RS 2.0. There are default resources. So if you're building a Java EE application, most likely you need a database. And if you need a database, then you need a JDBC resource. So the idea being, if you are easy to get started, so if you are building a Java EE application, there is automatically a JDBC resource created for you, which is tied to the underlying database for the Java EE runtime. So it makes it very easy for you to get started with Java EE 7. More added POJOs, and in JSF, we also added support for faceless flow. So I won't dig into the details of Java EE 7 here, but those are sort of my top 10 features. Now, it's very easy to get started with Java EE 7. Maven is sort of the default these days, but there are other build technologies like Gradle, so on and so forth. But if you want to start with Maven, then there are archetypes that are available, say web apps-java EE 7. You specify group ID, artifact ID, package, and literally by just this one command, you build your Java EE 7 application with the pom.xml appropriately configured. Okay, we'll take a look at this. By default, this application is not testable. So we'll take a look at it, how we make this application testable a little bit later. Because testability is a very, very key aspect of continuous integration, which is again the basis for continuous delivery. Now, if you want to learn the Java EE 7, the best resource is this GitHub page. So you can look at Java EE samples/Java EE 7-samples. There are about 200 plus samples. The good thing is there are about 37. Well, not about. There are 37 contributors to this project. So by all means, take a look at it. This GitHub project. You have access to all sorts of examples on different technologies. So if you want to learn on batch, click on this. You want to learn on concurrency, you want to learn on interceptor, you want to learn on EJB, CDI. Each technology has lots of samples that are included in there. So okay, so let's talk about, we learned about Java EE 7 briefly, but let's talk about what is Wildfly really. So Wildfly is a Red Hat's open source application server. This is what used to be JBoss application server. It achieved Java EE 7 compliance in February of this year. So anything and everything that you used to know as JBoss application server is now Wildfly. Now this is only the community part of it. The commercial product is still called as JBoss EAP. Okay, so Wildfly is a Java EE 7 compliant application server. 8.1 was released May of this year. 9.0 coming later this year. And it will have commercial support coming in JBoss EAP 7. Okay, so that's sort of your quick introduction to Wildfly. Now, if I were to show you here, I can go to the browser here. I can go to wildfly.org, for example. Once I go to wildfly.org, I can click on the downloads link here. It's very easy to get started. You can see there is 8.1 final over here. I can click on zip, I can download it, and then I'm good to go. And there is a 9.0 alpha 1 that is available as well. So literally you download it, you unzip it, and you fire the web server, and you fire the application server, and it's good to go right away. So, okay, we learned about Java EE 7, we learned about Wildfly, which is Java EE 7 compliant application server. The next thing is to talk about JBoss Tools. As I said, these are basically Eclipse plugins for JBoss technology. And you can see there's a whole variety of plugins that are available. This is Arquillian, which is a testing framework we'll talk about. This is REST Easy, which is the JAX RS implementation in Wildfly. Where you can look at Apache Camel, there is Forge, there is Hibernate. Of course, there is support for Wildfly. This is AeroGear, which provides you mobile capabilities. This is Live Reload, which simplifies your development deployment experience. So there are lots of tools that are available. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. Oh. I wonder why it is sharing. Did you see the slide? No, but did you see the slide when I talked about it earlier? Okay. So this is Eclipse plugins for JBoss technology. As you can see, there are lots of different plugins that are available. Okay. So let me go here to JBoss Tools and I don't know, my browser crashed actually. So, okay, let me share my screen again. Okay, sorry, I apologize for that. Okay. So, okay, we were talking about JBoss Tools. So what I'm going to do here is I go to, say, tools.jboss.org. If I go to this URL, you can download JBoss Tools from here. These are Eclipse plugins for JBoss technology. If you click on download here, there are a couple of ways by which you can install it. You can either download the plugins only. So let's say you have an existing version of Eclipse, then you can download these plugins and then you can install it into your Eclipse version, or you can say, hey, I want the JBoss Developer Studio, where you have an Eclipse with all the plugins bundled already. You can, of course, try the latest bundle, which is 8.0.0 CR1, and the standalone jar is available. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Okay, you can see my screen now, right? Okay, very good. So, further talking about my continuous delivery toolchain, I'll talk about Forge. What is Forge? The Forge is, we know what Vora is, which is write once, run anywhere. Vorai, on the other hand, is write once, run in any IDE. Okay, so what Forge is a tool that allows you to generate Java EE projects, and it uses Maven dependencies to generate those projects. And the fact that it's using Maven, that's exactly what makes it completely independent, and it can be used in any IDE. That's the beauty of it. Okay, it really aids in automation of repetitive tasks. So, for example, if you want to generate a project, a Java EE6 project in a certain way, you can script how the project needs to be generated. You don't need to be aware of what annotation do I need to use, what file needs to go where. You don't need to know all those details. Now, I'll show you in a second, but once you have Forge with you, you can quickly get started on how to create a new project. It helps you in generation of boilerplate code very easily. As I said, you don't need to remember the annotations. And it has support for Java EE 6 and 7, and it's very, very extensible in design. What that means is Forge has this concept of a core, and then around the core, everything is built as an add-on. So, for example, Arquillian can be added to Forge to do test-driven development, which is, again, one of the fundamental concepts of continuous delivery. There you go. So, if I were to show you Forge here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just Google for JBoss Forge. Oh, so the slides are gone again. What's happening? I don't know. That's weird. Okay, I don't know why it keeps hiding my slides again and again. I just upgraded to OS X Maverick yesterday, so I don't know if that is the issue here. Wow, it keeps hiding my screen again and again. It seems like every time I'm switching back and forth from presentation to a browser, it takes the mode away. Okay. So if I look for, so can you see my browser now? Okay, that's good. I'll pay special attention to this, and it's because it's sharing my screen. Okay. So if you go to forge.jboss.org, this is the tool. It says the fastest way to build Maven-based Java EE projects. I can go to the download link here. Forge is included in JBoss Developer Studio, or you can get it for your IDE, or there's a zip bundle that is available as well. So let me show you how easy it is to get started with a simple zip bundle. I'm just going to go to Tools here. Okay, make my font a little bit bigger. Okay, so if I go to Forge distribution, let's see, what do I have the latest? I have 10.1. Okay, so I pre-downloaded the zip file here, so I can say bin Forge, and that's how I start my Forge. So once I start my Forge, it starts my Forge shell. Then I can say I want to generate a new project. Well, first of all, I'm on the shell here. I don't know what to do. So I hit tab, and it shows me the list of commands. So one of the commands that I care about here is I want to generate a new project. Okay, so I say project new. Then I hit tab again, and it shows a colored naming convention saying, okay, dash dash name. So I provided a specific name. So I can say sample, or I can say Kiev, or maybe hello Kiev. Right? And then I can say, Let me make my window a little bit higher here. So once I say here, I say -t, it shows me all the command line options that are available with -t. But I want to specify a top level package, so I say org.sample. Okay, and that's it. Once I click on it, it generates a project for me, and it automatically changes the directory to hello Kiev as well. Now I can look at my pom.xml here. Very trivial pom.xml, so it's 100% already. But all it has is just a Maven war plugin targeting JDK17. Okay. Now here I can say, if I hit tab here, it is a lot more commands that are available now. Okay. So all the Java EE commands, etc., are available for me. So if I say what Java EE command is available, so I say Java EE -setup. Then it says Java EE version, and I say 7. So there you go. So I install Java EE 7 version there. If I look at pom.xml here, so my Java EE 7 dependency is just added over there. So very simple and iterative way. You don't have to remember the boilerplate code. It automatically takes care of this code generation for you. Similarly, now I'm in my project. I want to do JPA setup. So I say JPA setup. And it says, what JPA version do you care about? I know it's 2.1 in Java EE 7. So I add that. There you go. But once again, if I look at my pom.xml here, actually it's in subsistence XML already. So if I get out here, and now I look at my pom.xml, you can see the Java EE API is now included in there. So that's pretty cool. And that's the beauty of it. It very easily and in a very easy manner, it generates all the boilerplate code for you. I'm going to go back to my presentation mode here. So that's about my JBoss Forge. Another critical piece of this entire continuous delivery toolchain is OpenShift. Now, OpenShift is Red Hat's PaaS, open source PaaS platform, and it comes in 3 different flavors. First of all, it has OpenShift Origin, which is in a classic Red Hat style. Everything is contributed to in the open source. That's OpenShift Origin. Then there is OpenShift Online, which is the public version of the cloud. So anybody can go to OpenShift.com, sign up for a free account, and as part of that account, you get certain compute capacity, disk capacity, memory capacity. We'll talk about that. Free. There is no time bombing. It stays with you forever. And then, of course, there is OpenShift Enterprise, which is the public or the private cloud version of it. So if you have a data center where you want to run a cloud, then OpenShift Enterprise will fit in there very well. The beauty of OpenShift is it comes with pluggable cartridges. So if you want to think about Wildfly, that's a pluggable cartridge that can be run on OpenShift very easily. If you want to think about any other language like Ruby, PHP, all of those languages are supported on OpenShift and they run very well. So it's truly a polyglot PaaS environment. Not just polyglot in terms of the language, but in terms of the databases and application servers as well. So for example, there is a cartridge for Glassfish on OpenShift. There is a cartridge for Liberty Profile that is there on OpenShift. So that's pretty cool. By default, when you run an instance or provision an application on OpenShift, it gives you a gear. Gear is of 3 different sizes, small, medium, and large. When you sign up for a free account, you get 3 gears, small gears. And the small gear means 1 GB of disk space and half a gig of RAM. So by default, think about if you go to OpenShift.com, sign up for a, let me show you actually that. Oh, my sharing went away. So let me bring my sharing back. I just realized that. Yeah, as soon as I switch from presentation mode, it just hides my sharing. Okay, so I go back here and I go to OpenShift.com. So here I am. I can go to sign up here. Come on. if I go to sign up here, all I give is my email address, password, and that's it. You sign up. There is no credit card required, nothing of that sort. Or if you have an account already, then you can log in here. And in terms of login, you will see this as an empty, but I have a few applications already created. That's why you see them here. But otherwise, it will be empty. And then you can say add an application. And if you want to add an application here, then you're seeing, there are different applications that can be easily installed. So there's Jenkins, of course, our continuous integration server. These are classical Red Hat JBoss products. Then, of course, there is JBoss application server, Tomcat, Vertex, Wildfly, all different languages, PHP, Ruby, Python, all those Go language, all those languages, even Node.js is there. Those are all easily can be configured over there. Okay. So that's about OpenShift actually. The last piece in terms of continuous delivery that is very important is Arquillian. Now, Arquillian is a highly extensible testing platform for the JVM that enables to easily create automated tests. That's sort of a one-line definition of Arquillian, but what that really means is, how Arquillian allows you to do integration testing very easily for Java EE. And it does that in a completely automated manner. The biggest difference between Arquillian and any other framework really is, you write the test using Arquillian framework, and then you can run those Java EE tests against any other container. So it truly runs Java EE tests in a container agnostic manner. So you run your test once, and then you say, I want to run this test against Wildfly. Then I want to run the same test against Glassfish. I want to run the same test against WebLogic, WebSphere. And that's the beauty it provides. So let's see how it does that. So Arquillian works on the concept of a container adapter. Okay. So there are different container adapters that are available. This is Weld, which is CDI implementation, Tomcat, Wildfly, Glassfish, OpenShift. All of these are different container adapters, and Arquillian has about 36 of those. So what you do is you start or connect to a container by specifying the container adapter. And I'll show you in the code a little bit how we connect to a container, literally by just specifying the adapter. Then you have your tests, then you package them. As part of that, Arquillian also provides some dependency injection services. So for example, your test is deployed on a container. You don't know what is the name of the war file, the context root and stuff like that. That can be very easily injected by Arquillian and made available to you. And I'll show you a sample of that. Now, you can run the test in the container. So you can say, hey, by the way, this is a REST endpoint, or this is a CDI test. Excuse me. So you can say this is a CDI test. Take this var, deploy it in the container, and then run it accordingly. So yes, Arquillian can certainly do that. Or you can say this is a REST test, REST endpoint. Deploy the archive in the container, but run the test outside the container. So those in container and outside container modes are possible. Another thing that Arquillian also allows you is two deployment modes. There is a remote mode where the container is running for you. All you need to do is just deploy to the container and undeploy from the container, where you are responsible for managing the lifecycle of the container. And then there is a managed mode where you tell Arquillian, go download my container, start the container, deploy the test, undeploy the test, and stop the container as well. Now in that case, Arquillian is responsible for managing the lifecycle of the container. Now once the tests are run, you effectively capture the results and generate a test report. In this case, it's showing 2 tests ran, 2 passed, no failure, no error. We all love reports like that. And finally, you undeploy the test archive and stop or disconnect from the container. Okay, so very simple concept with Arquillian. So earlier we saw how easy it is to generate a Java EE 7 application using a Maven archetype. Now here on the screen, what I'm showing you is how you can easily generate a testable Java EE7 application. Okay, so let's actually copy this code and run this Maven command here. Okay. Oh, okay. I see my screen sharing is gone again. Seems like Mavericks and Google Hangout are not behaving well. Yosemite actually, it's not Mavericks anymore because this is Yosemite. Literally updated yesterday. It got released yesterday, so I updated it. Okay, so here we go. So we get out of Forge here. Okay. We don't need this hello team. We can get out here. Let's say we go to the temp directory. Okay. All I'm going to do is copy that command here. Let me move this up here so that you can see it nicely. So Maven archstack generate batch mode. I'm saying this is my archstack group ID, archstack artifact ID. Then this is a group ID for the project and artifact ID for the project. I hit enter. And it didn't like it. Okay. So that's where I do this. Testable Java EE7. Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay. Let me copy it from here. Then try it here. Okay. Okay, that worked. Okay. So I need to fix that command in my presentation then. So this is a blog that I did earlier. So here we go, archetype ID, artifact ID, group ID, artifact ID. Okay, I don't know what's the missing part here. Okay, well anyway, so this is the project that is generated for me. Now if I open up this form.xml here, I can say Arquillian form.xml. There you go. This is my form.xml. If you see the relevant pieces here, you can get rid of these dependencies. You can hide as well. Okay, so here you go. So this has multiple profiles. One of them is a Wildfly managed Arquillian profile, which is the default profile. And what that says is, Arquillian is going to be responsible for managing the lifecycle of Wildfly in this case. Okay? And it has the relevant dependencies, etc., figured out here. So that's one. Okay, so that's one profile. Second profile is a Wildfly remote Arquillian. And what that says is, Wildfly is running somewhere else, just go run the test over there and undeploy the archive. So somebody else is managing the lifecycle of Wildfly. Similarly, there is Glassfish embedded Arquillian, where Glassfish can also run in an embedded manner, and that's what this is about. Or there's a Glassfish remote Arquillian, where Glassfish is running somewhere else, and you just go run the test to that Glassfish instance. Okay? So those are the four profiles it generates. If I go back to my presentation here, and it's still sharing. So we talked about how we have four different profiles. Okay, you can easily download. We already downloaded Wildfly 8.1 from wildfly.org. We can easily start up Wildfly using this. Well, you know what? Let's show that actually. And my sharing went away. So bring back sharing. Okay. So I'm back here. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is, let's say I'm going to go to my Wildfly 8.1 directory, and I'm going to fire up Wildfly here. So this is my Wildfly running now. Okay. So here I'm going to say Maven test, and remember we had a profile here. So if I go back to this slide here, this is the profile we are looking at, our Wildfly remote Arquillian. Because we're saying Arquillian is not responsible for Wildfly lifecycle. I am already responsible for it. I'm running it. So let's run it. So if I monitor it here, here you go. So you can see, if you see here, it says this archive was deployed here. It found these JNDI bindings, its beans, etc. It created some data in the bean. This is the context. So remember we were talking about how Arquillian can share what is the war file context, because it uses the UUID. So that's the name it uses, and then it finally undeploys the application here. Okay, and then on the Arquillian side, it says ran 6 tests, no failure, no error. That's a good thing. Okay. All right. So moving on. Now, what I showed you was how easy it is to get started with Arquillian, specifically if you are starting a brand new project. That is always easy. But what if you already have a project, a Java EE project, and you want to test enable it? Because remember, we said test-driven development is the basis for continuous integration. You have to have test-driven development in place before you can even get to continuous integration. Because continuous integration, really what happens is somebody pushes a code in the repository, there's a continuous integration server running somewhere, which is going to check out the code and run the test and report the results. So in that sense, you have to have a test-driven development. So Forge, as we talked about, has an extensible platform. There's a plugin that is available or add-on that is available for Forge, which allows you to easily enable Arquillian for an existing project. So in Forge, you can give this command called as add-on install from Git, and then it'll install the plugin. Okay, so we generated a project, and I think we might have we deleted that project actually. Back to the sharing mode again. So what we do is we install this additional plugin or add-on, and then in the project we say Arquillian setup, which is an existing Java EE project. You can say Arquillian test framework, either JUnit or TestNG, and then I'm specifying the container adapter, whether I want to use Wildfly remote, Wildfly manage, Glassfish remote, Glassfish manage, and there are about 36 of those, as I said. You get to choose those, and it places the right set of dependencies in your pom.xml very easily. Before I dig into the code and show more of it, let's talk about what is sort of our thought process here. How do we expect this continuous delivery to work? So stage one, really, as I said earlier, is test-driven development. That's really the basic of it. So what you're doing is you have, say, JBoss Developer Studio and Wildfly on your machine, and you're building your code over there. You've built some basic functionality. Then you say, okay, you know what? I'm going to be doing TDD, so I'm going to start writing tests for my applications. So you start writing JUnit tests over there. And then you say, I'm going to do some integration testing. I want my test to run against a container, because JUnit runs it, you can test a class, a function, but you cannot run them against a container. Otherwise, you'll have to take your war file and deploy it onto the container. Arquillian brings the container to you. So you start running your test against a container. So that's your basic test-driven development. Now remember, we are not even talking about things like code review, code coverage, application performance monitoring. All of those are very, very important aspects here and should be integrated. I'm just suggesting a very simple deployment pipeline to begin with, which can definitely be extensible later on. Second step really is continuous integration. So you have your basic TDD working. So you say, okay, now I'm going to have a continuous integration server. And as I said earlier, in OpenShift, you can easily enable continuous integration for any application. So by running the Jenkins server. So you say, every time I commit a change or I push to my Git repo, my Jenkins server is automatically going to check out, run the test, and have the results ready for me. Now this is still manual, but remember, this is second stage. So, but this is a very, very critical stage. This is a very, very important stage for continuous delivery. As a matter of fact, what we mean to say is the deployment pipeline pattern that we talked about earlier is really a logical conclusion of continuous integration. It's only a beginning of continuous integration. Continuous integration is really only a beginning of deployment pipeline pattern actually. So that's where we start. Okay. Yeah, there you go. So deployment pipeline pattern is a continuous integration taken to its logical conclusion. And this is really mentioned in the book that was written by Jez and Wesley. So let's see. Now, what is our final stage for continuous delivery, which is, as I said, almost automated deployment pipeline. Okay. So I git push, now it goes to Jenkins, results are generated, but I want to run these tests not on a local Wildfly server, but I want to run it in a test environment. Remember we talked about how our infrastructure has to be checked into a code repository as well. And that's where OpenShift really helps you, because OpenShift is a public PaaS environment or even a private or a hybrid PaaS environment. So you can easily create a Git repo. You can easily replicate how you want your Wildfly to be configured in case of when you're spinning up a new instance. So you set up a test instance, you set up your resources, all of which are completely checked into a Git repo, and you say, from this Git repo, create this test Wildfly instance on OpenShift, fully reproducible. So from Jenkins, you say run on the test environment. You check the test status, the Jenkins test, check the test status, and once it checks it, then it pushes the source code on your production. So think about it. In terms of the deployment pipeline, what happens is, at any point of time, if I can walk you through this, you make a change using your local deployment environment. You are testing it. You JUnit test it. You Arquillian test it. The moment you push it to a container, git push, Jenkins kick in, does continuous integration. It runs the test against the test environment, checks the results, and pushes it to production. Now, this is where things get interesting, because right now this is a very basic deployment pipeline, but effectively here is where you can start integrating other aspects. So for example, I was looking at Jacoco. Jacoco is Java code coverage tool. You can start adding Jacoco and saying, start setting metrics of your own. Oh, by the way, if my code coverage falls less than 80%, I'm gonna break the deployment pipeline. I don't want this to be a deployment. Well, this is a deployment pipeline, but you set the criteria that if code coverage falls less than 80%, don't deploy to production. Similarly, you can start looking at application performance monitoring. There are a lot of tools for that. So like New Relic is a tool that is available. And so we are looking at how we can create an Arquillian and New Relic plugin which would allow you to do performance monitoring at all points of time. Now let's say you build a feature here in JBoss Developer Studio using Wildfly in the Java EE7 application. You have done some performance tuning. Then you can say, by the way, set up that Arquillian plugin in a separate profile, trigger that, run the performance benchmarks, and if the performance or throughput or scalability has fallen below a certain number, do not deploy into production. So the point being, at any given point of time, if you have a feature that is committed into the workspace, it is automatically gone into the production, and that is a fully automated deployment pipeline. It's not easy to set up. I'm not saying it's easy. If it's easy, everybody will do it. It does require effort. There are a lot of technologies available for that, but I think a lot of it requires team changes, people changes, alignment, and things like that. Okay, so let me stop the presentation here for a second and share my screen again. And I'm going to show you, okay, I'm going to show you what I played with and what worked for me. Okay, where is my deployment? JBoss deployer. Oh, it's still starting. What happened here? Okay, let me start my deployer here, JBoss Developer Studio again. Oh, you know what? Yeah, okay. This is older version. Yeah. Okay. So I think my upgrade to Yosemite is a little bit goofy here. So what I'm going to do is walk you through the website instead. I'm going to go to my GitHub repo. Okay, let's take a look at form.xml first. Okay. So this is my form.xml. Let me increase the font size here. Okay. This is my snapshots, dependencies. Those are all okay. This is not a relevant profile. This needs to go away. Okay, there you go. So this is the first profile that I'm looking at it. And this is in my POM XML, I have a Arquillian Wildfly remote profile where I'm saying I built my test and I'm going to run against a remote Wildfly. This Wildfly could be running locally on my machine, or this could be running on some remote machine. It doesn't matter for now, okay? But what I'm using is Wildfly Arquillian container remote for that, okay? So that's that. So just by specifying that container, it refers to the default host and port. If you want to configure it, you can configure it. And the way you configure it is by specifying configuration element here for the Maven Surefire plugin. You say Arquillian launch profile is Wildfly remote, and if I go back here, and in my test resources Arquillian.xml, if I show you here, it says Wildfly remote. Now this Wildfly remote is default true. It does not specify any host, port, etc., anything of that sort. But what that means is it's going to refer to the default ones, which is localhost and 9990. Go back to my form XML. I apologize, my JBoss Developer Studio is a little bit funky today because of the upgrade to the operating system. So this is my Wildfly remote. Then I have a Arquillian Wildfly OpenShift. So for example, let's say from my development machine, I want to run something against the Wildfly test instance, which is running in OpenShift. So in which case, I'm saying the only difference being, first of all, I'm using Arquillian OpenShift adapter here. That's one, okay? Instead of the Arquillian Wildfly Arquillian container remote, I'm just using Arquillian OpenShift adapter here. And then in the configuration element, I'm specifying Wildfly OpenShift. If I open up a new page here, now if you see in my Wildfly OpenShift profile, see here, I'm specifying Wildfly OpenShift profile, and in my profile, I'm saying this is my OpenShift namespace, this is my OpenShift application name, and the fact that I'm saying Java EE7 test, this is I can choose whatever name I want it to be, but this is my test environment, which is generated on OpenShift. And as I said, that could be very easily generated from a Git repo. Then I'm specifying my SSH username, login, etc. Okay. Now I agree, this all should be hard coded. It should not be. Well, this should not be hard-coded. It should really be parameterized. And that's where your third profile comes in handy. You're saying Jenkins OpenShift. So now, in this case, I'm still using Arquillian OpenShift, but I'm using the Jenkins OpenShift property profile here. And if I look at my Jenkins OpenShift profile here, now I'm using standard properties. All I'm saying is my namespace, application name is identified by an environment variable. My SSH username is identified by environment variable. So if I go back to my presentation for a second here, when Jenkins is running against the test environment on OpenShift, well, first of all, when I'm running from development to this test environment, I can do that. that's where I need to explicitly specify the name, SSH username, etc. But when Jenkins is running against this test environment, because they are within OpenShift and this Jenkins is associated with it, they can leverage the SSH keys and all those things. Those are automatically set up for you. And that's what simplifies the entire deployment pipeline for you. Okay. So this source code that I'm showing over here is available on my GitHub repo, Arun Gupta, and you can look at continuous integration OpenShift. And for the last time, I would like to walk you through this pipeline again. So the thought process of this deployment pipeline is build a feature here, you run it against local while fly, using JUnit Arquillian. As soon as you push into the workspace, it runs, it does continuous integration using Jenkins. And there might be other people who are pushing source code to this Jenkins instance as well. But as soon as it comes to this Jenkins instance, the tester ran against this test environment on OpenShift, results verified and pushed into production. And that's what basically kind of maintains your deployment pipeline. Okay, that's pretty much the end of my presentation. And with that, if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Okay, if you have any questions, please come to the... I have maybe one question. About that.
Hello?
All your presentation is based on the assumption that we have business logic of the application. Don't use any database.
For example, how can we deal, for example, with at least simple MySQL database? And when we will have a changes in schema and in some logic inside of database?
Yeah, that's a very good question actually. I'm glad you asked that question because one of the tools that I've seen customers using in production is called as Flyway. And Flyway is used for database migration. And essentially what you can do is you can write those Flyway scripts, check them into the source code environment as well. And then you can say, oh, by the way, I'm upgrading the version as part of upgrade, apply this Flyway script, and then we do database migration, apply this code, and then apply the business logic. So all of that could be completely scripted and put into the source code. Axel Fontaine is the CEO for this company called JBoss Tools, which is responsible for Flyway. He and I chatted a couple of weeks ago. I will include that scenario into my application as well, and hopefully we'll collaborate next time.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. I saw in your presentations and we can run Arquillian tests against any remote server.
Yes.
And the question is, can we test without doing micro deployment? Because in Arquillian test we are doing micro deployment every time when we run the test case. And
right.
Can we test without micro deployment if we have if we have done deployment previously on that server, for example?
So you mean your WAR file is already deployed? You want to run the test against that WAR file?
I mean when we already deployed the application and
yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
If we have already deployed state and would like to test that remote server with Arquillian, can we do it?
Actually, that's a very good question. I have never tried that. So let me try that and send me a Twitter message at Arun Gupta, and what I'll do is I'll find out more details about that and then send you an email on that, okay? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Arun, for joining us. I hope next year you will be with us really.
I hope so. I hope so. No, thank you. Thank you so much for waiting. I hope the presentation was well received. Let me know if there's any feedback on it. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Bye.